The duffel bag sat open on the bed like a wound, and I watched my husband fold his good merino sweater into it with the same gentle care he hadn't shown me in 3 years. Outside our window, the rain came down soft and gray over the cedars, that particular Vancouver drizzle that never quite commits to being a storm. Trent zipped a side pocket. The sound was small and final. "Flight's at 6:40, he said, not looking at me. "I'll grab a coffee at the gate. Calgary's only an hour up, but the client dinner runs late, so don't wait." "The Hargrove portfolio?" I asked, leaning in the doorway with my arms crossed. "Our bedroom, my bedroom. Lately the room had felt too big, like a stage after the audience has gone home. Boardman's running the numbers. I just shake hands and sign." He checked his watch, a sleek thing he bought himself last Christmas while I'd unwrapped a gift card he'd clearly grabbed at the till. 3 nights, in and out. He finally looked up, and his eyes had that cool, professional politeness, the look he gave the barista or the parking attendant. "You good with the kids?" You good with the kids. Like I was a neighbor he was asking to water the ferns. 12 years married, and he asked me like I was a favor. "We have a routine," I said. My voice came out level. I'd gotten very good at level. The other option was screaming, and screaming took energy I didn't have to spare, energy I was spending on the bakery, on Maeve's art, on Jonah's ridiculous, beautiful science fair brain. "Right, of course." He hauled the bag onto his shoulder. "Text you when I land." He brushed past me, leaving the smell of his cologne hanging in the hall, that sandalwood thing that used to mean something. I heard him say, "Later, guys," downstairs. Heard the kids murmur back without much in it. Heard the front door click. A minute later, his car pulled out of the drive and rolled down toward the water, and our house in Point Grey, the one everyone called our forever home, sank into its expensive quiet. I went down. Maeve was folded into the window seat with her sketchbook on her knees, her pencil moving in those quick, sure lines she'd had since she was 6. Jonah lay across the Chesterfield like a dropped coat, thumbs flying over his tablet. "He forgot," Jonah said, not looking up. "Forgot what, bud?" "My science fair's Thursday. Mr. Okafor is putting my hydro model in the district showcase. I told Dad twice at dinner last week." A sharp little ache, that old familiar one, landed just under my breastbone. "He's got a lot on his plate with this Calgary thing." "He always has a lot on his plate," Maeve said. Quiet, but clear. She didn't look up, except for golf, or that golf thing in Scottsdale last winter. "Maeve." "It's fine, Mom." She finally lifted her eyes to me, and in those 10-year-old eyes was a kind of knowing that broke something in me. "We're used to it." That was the second knife in under 10 minutes. The first was Trent walking out so easily. This one, my kid's calm, practiced acceptance, went in deeper. I wanted to argue, to list all the times he'd been there, and I stood there in my own living room realizing I couldn't fill out the list. The last school concert he'd attended, he'd spent on his phone. The father-son canoe trip he bailed on for a client emergency that resolved itself by Sunday lunch. My phone buzzed on the island. Glenda, my mother-in-law. A cold that had nothing to do with the rain crawled up my neck. I almost let it go to voicemail, but 12 years of keeping up the front made me answer. "Glenda, hi." "Sweetheart." Her voice was warm in that way that always left a residue, like over-sugared tea. "I hope we're not catching you at a bad moment. Roland and I were just finalizing the trip." "Trip?" "Portugal, dear. We've been talking about it forever. 2 weeks, the Algarve." And with Trent away, the girls thought, why not come along? Make a proper family thing of it. "We leave tomorrow." A little laugh. "Spur of the moment, I know. We're terrible." Carolyn and Bryn, Trent's sisters, going to Portugal? Tomorrow. The same week he was suddenly in Calgary. Some quiet animal part of me went very still. "That sounds lovely," I said. "We'll bring you back something pretty. Kiss those babies for us." And she was gone. I stood holding the phone for a long time after the line went dead. 12 years I'd watched this family move in unison. A school of fish turning all at once, and they never once turned for me. I'd married into the choreography and learned the steps, and they still treated me like a girl who'd wandered in off the street. I went into the pantry, the little galley off the kitchen where I keep the good flour and the chocolate I don't share, and I sat down on the step stool and I opened the banking app. I don't know why I did it that night. I'd glanced at our joint visa 100 times, but I scrolled slowly this time, the way you reread a letter looking for the part that hurt. Groceries, gas, a parking lot downtown, and there, 3 days ago, a charge I didn't recognize. $420 to a florist in Tofino. A 6-hour trip and a ferry from where Trent claimed to be standing in a Calgary boardroom. I sat very still. Then I opened a browser and typed the florist's name, and from there, like pulling a single thread, I found that they did almost all their volume for one client. A place called Cedar Bloom, a private maternity and postpartum retreat tucked into the rainforest above Chesterman Beach. Soft photography, eucalyptus, words like restorative and bespoke, and your 4th trimester. The kind of place that costs more a night than most people make in a week. I closed the laptop. I went upstairs and checked on my sleeping kids, and I came back down and I did not cry. I made tea, the real kind, and I sat at the island until the rain stopped, and somewhere in those hours the woman who kept everything level decided she was done keeping it level. She was just going to be very, very precise instead. The next morning, after drop-off, I didn't open the bakery. I texted my baker to handle the morning rush, and I called a number I'd found on a plain, unfussy website, the kind that doesn't try to sell you anything. "I'd like to verify my husband's whereabouts," I told the man who answered. The words felt alien and terribly simple in my mouth. "He says he's at a conference. I have reason to think that isn't true. And his whole family has given a reason for being away that I don't believe either. The timing is off." "Infidelity, possibly?" The voice was flat and unhurried. "It's more than that. I think he's moving money." A pause. "I'll need names, dates, vehicles, a recent photo, and a retainer. We can meet today if you'd like." His name was Desmond Ray, and his office was a small, clean room above a noodle shop on Hastings with a view of a brick wall. He was maybe 50, with cropped gray hair and the still, watchful build of a man who used to be a cop. He didn't make small talk, which I appreciated more than I can say. I slid a folder across the desk. Trent's full name, his birth date, his license plate, a clear photo from the company holiday party. Glenda, Roland, Carolyn, Bryn, and their claimed Portugal dates. The florist charge. The Cedar Bloom listing. Desmond read it without expression. "You think there's a pregnancy?" "I think it's a possibility I need confirmed or eliminated." He looked at me a moment longer than the other facts seemed to warrant. "Most people in your chair are hoping I tell them they're wrong." "I stopped hoping somewhere around the fairy math," I said. He almost smiled. "I'll call you in 2 days." He called in 2. "I've got visual confirmation. It's conclusive. You'll want to be sitting down before you open the link." I was in the little office behind the bakery, door shut, the smell of cardamom buns coming through the wall. I clicked. An encrypted player. The footage was shaky, shot from a distance with a long lens through the window of a ground-floor suite, but it was clear enough. There was Trent in a soft gray Henley I'd never seen, looking looser and younger than he had in years, and he was holding a newborn against his chest with both hands like the baby was made of glass. A woman lay in the bed behind him, dark-haired, exhausted, glowing, and around them, like courtiers at a christening, stood Glenda and Roland and Carolyn and Bryn, all of them beaming, all of them turned toward this baby the way they'd never once turned toward mine. Glenda was crying. Happy tears. The kind she'd never managed at either of my children's births, both of which she'd arrived at hours late with a complaint about parking. I watched the whole thing without making a sound. When it ended, I sat there and felt something I hadn't expected, which was not heartbreak but a clean, cold clarity, like the moment the anesthetic wears off and the pain finally has edges you can map. There was a second file. Desmond, careful man, had done more than I'd asked. While confirming the family's location, he'd come across a piece of mail forwarded to the retreat, a statement from a credit union in Alberta, addressed to a numbered company I'd never heard of, a company with Trent listed as the sole director. He'd photographed the envelope and the visible header. He hadn't opened it. He didn't have to. The pattern was enough. That night, I sat my children down at the kitchen island with hot chocolate, the good kind I make with real cream, and I told them the truth, because I had decided that whatever this house was going to be, it was not going to be a place where my kids learned that adults lie to keep things smooth. Your dad has been keeping a big secret, I said. He has a girlfriend, and she's just had a baby. Jonah blinked. 8 years old, processing, the gears turning. You mean a girlfriend, like a wife girlfriend? Yes, bud. Is that why he's never here? And why he gets mad when I show him my stuff? The blunt logic of a child landed like a hammer. Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. Maeve's face had gone hard, and it was not the soft crumpling of a hurt little girl. It was the flat, level look of someone reading a verdict. He's been taking our money too, hasn't he? I stared at her. I heard you on the phone with the bank a couple weeks ago. You said transfers. She shrugged, a small, heartbreakingly adult shrug, and last fall, I saw a letter on his desk. It wasn't from our bank. The logo was different. It said something with Alberta. I looked it up because it seemed weird. I didn't say anything because I figured it was a work thing. My sharp, watchful girl, of course she'd seen it. She saw everything. It wasn't a work thing, I said. And none of this, listen to me, both of you, none of this is yours to carry. Do you understand me? Not 1 ounce. Your dad's choices are about him. You are smart and you are good and you are loved, completely by me, no matter what. Forever. Jonah's eyes were huge. What happens now? Now we protect ourselves, I said, and the words felt like a vow rising up out of the floor. The 3 of us. It might be hard for a while. There'll be changes, but we are going to be okay. Better than okay. I promise you that. Maeve reached over and squeezed my hand. We're with you, Mom. Team Mercer, Jonah said suddenly, fiercely. My maiden name, the one on the bakery sign, the name on the lease, the name that was mine before any of these people decided I was theirs to manage. My throat closed. Team Mercer, I said. And then, while they slept, I went to work. Here is the thing nobody tells you about being underestimated for 12 years. You learn the whole house while they think you're just keeping it tidy. I knew where the documents were. I knew the lawyer Trent used and, more usefully, the one he'd never bothered to find out I'd quietly consulted 2 years earlier, back when the loneliness first started feeling like a warning instead of a mood. Her name was Imogen Tate, and when I called her at 8 the next morning, she remembered me from a single coffee. You kept my card, she said. I keep things that might matter. I drove downtown and laid it all out on her glass table, the video, the numbered company, the Alberta Credit Union, 12 years of tax returns, the joint accounts, and the one card I'd been holding so long I'd half forgotten I had it. The house. The Point Grey house, Imogen said, flipping to the deed. It's in your name only. My grandmother left me her place in Burnaby when she passed. I sold it the year before the wedding and bought the Point Grey lot with the proceeds. Before Trent and I married, we built on it after. I'd kept the records out of habit, the same habit that keeps a baker weighing the flour even when she's made the recipe 1,000 times. I never put him on title. He always said he'd get around to it. He never did, because in his head he already owned everything. Imogen looked up at me, and for the first time, something flickered behind her professional calm. It was the look of a woman who has just been handed exactly the right tool. Under the Family Law Act, inherited property and what you bring into the marriage can be excluded from family property. The home you bought before marriage, with your inheritance, the growth on it gets shared. But the house itself, the asset, that's arguably yours. And it is solely in your name. She set the deed down very carefully. He cannot stop you from selling your own house. Then list it, I said. There are kids. There's process. We'll do this properly so nothing he throws can stick. She was already writing. I want an exclusive occupancy order so he can't move back in and create a mess. I want every joint account frozen, and the contents preserved, not vanished, preserved on the record. So when he claims you cleaned him out, we show the court we did it by the book with both sides documented. The numbered company in Alberta we trace. If he's been moving marital funds out, that's not a clever play, it's a gift to us. She glanced up. You understand what I'm building? You're building the wall he can't climb. I'm building a wall, and then I'm going to charge him for the bricks. She didn't smile when she said it, which is how I knew she meant it. It took 11 days. I moved with a precision that surprised even me, the kind that comes when grief gets organized. I transferred what was legitimately mine and the kids into accounts he'd never touched, every dollar logged, every step copied to Imogen. I called the bakery's accountant and clean-walled the business he'd never been part of anyway. I quietly enrolled Maeve and Jonah for the new term at a school across town, near the smaller house I'd already started to imagine. A beautiful, sagging heritage thing on a quiet street in East Van that I'd been driving past for a year, telling myself I'd never have a reason to buy. And I locked the house. New deadbolts, new codes. The old code had been Maeve's birthday, which Trent had never been able to remember anyway. Then I put the sign on the lawn. Discreet, tasteful, a broker's logo half the neighborhood recognized. For sale. I stood on the sidewalk in the rain and looked at it for a while, and I felt the strangest thing, which was lightness. They came home on a Sunday. I wasn't there, of course, but the broker, who turned out to have a sense of theater, told me about it later, and Desmond filled in the rest from his car down the street, and so I can see it the way you see a film. Trent's car pulls up the drive he thinks is still his. The whole flock spills out, stiff from the ferry and the long road back. Glenda complaining about her hip, Carolyn carrying a duty-free bag, Bryn on her phone. Trent saunters up the flagstones digging for his keys, already half rehearsing whatever line he planned to feed me about jet lag in Calgary. He slides the key in. It doesn't turn. He jiggles it, frowns, tries the smart lock, punches in Maeve's birthday. Red light. Tries again, slower. Like the keypad's the one that's confused. Red light. What's the holdup, sweetheart? Glenda calls from the path. Lock's stuck, he mutters. He tries the back code. Red light. He calls my cell. It goes straight to the bakery's voicemail, the business line, not me. Just the cheerful recording about hours and gluten-free options. And then he sees it. The thing his panic had blinded him to. The small sign in his own lawn. For sale. The broker said the color went out of his face like someone had pulled a plug. He stumbled back and his bag dropped off his shoulder and hit the stones. And Roland barked, "What is it?" And Trent could only point and say, "The house. It's for sale." And the whole family stood there on the path of a house. None of them could enter, staring at a piece of plastic and metal that had quietly ended the world they thought they owned. He called 11 times that night. He left voicemails that started furious and ended frightened. He drove to the bakery. I told the staff to call the non-emergency line if he made a scene, and he was smart enough not to. He showed up at Imogen's office the next morning with his own lawyer and a face like a man who'd swallowed seawater, and Imogen sent him home with a folder of motions and a single sentence I'd asked her to deliver word for word. My client wishes you and your new family every happiness, from a distance. What followed was not loud. That's the part I want people to understand. There were no screaming matches. The cruelty had already been done quietly, over years, in all the dinners he skipped and the school nights he sat out and the money he funneled north while my kids saved their birthday cash in a jar. The reckoning was just as quiet, only this time the quiet was on my side. The numbered company unraveled fast. Imogen traced nearly $200,000 Trent had moved out of our joint life and into the Alberta account over 18 months. Money meant for a clean exit and a soft landing with the woman from the retreat, whose name, I learned, was Bianca. The court does not love a man who hides marital money to start a second household. It loves him even less when the woman he hid it for has a baby that, on the timeline, was conceived while he was still telling his wife he loved her at Christmas. He fought the house. He couldn't win it, but he fought, and every motion his lawyer filed, Imogen answered with the deed and the inheritance records and a calm so total it must have felt like running into a wall in the dark. The house was mine. The exclusion held. I sold it for more than we'd ever spent on it, and I bought the sagging heritage place in East Van outright, with money that was entirely my own, and there was enough left over to seal both kids' education funds shut where no one could ever touch them. The schools, the move, the new accounts, the support order, all of it landed the way Imogen had built it to land, brick by brick, nothing for him to grip. The court ordered child support and a modest, time-limited spousal support, given my own income, and ordered Trent to pay a chunk of my legal fees on top. Because, as the judge noted, the conduct that had necessitated the litigation was entirely his. I thought that was the end of it. It wasn't, quite. There was one more move, and it's the one that still makes me laugh. 8 months later, an envelope arrived at the bakery. Heavy cardstock, gold edges, the works. A wedding invitation. Trent and Bianca at a vineyard up in the Okanagan. Black tie, registry at a store I couldn't afford on a slow month. Tucked inside, on the same expensive paper, a handwritten note from Glenda. She wrote that the children deserved a stable, blended family. That I had won, and shouldn't I be gracious in victory? That for the sake of the kids and their new little brother, I might find it in my heart to ease the support, just a little, since weddings are dear and new beginnings are hard. I read it twice. The audacity was almost beautiful. The same family that had cried over Bianca's baby and never mine, the same family that had taken Portugal as cover, now asking me to fund the celebration of the very betrayal they'd helped arrange. Magnanimous in victory. The language hadn't changed in 12 years, only the flavor. Once it was dismissal, and now it was a plea. But the core was the same old assumption that I existed, to make their lives smoother. That same week, like a gift, Trent's lawyer filed a motion to reduce his support payments. Grounds, financial hardship, new obligations, a growing family. I called Imogen. He's asking the court to cut what he owes our kids, I said, so he can pay for his wedding. There was a beat of genuine appreciative silence on the line. Send me the invitation. It's already scanned. Oh, I love this, she said softly. We file the invitation as an exhibit. Black tie vineyard wedding, premium registry, new household. A man pleading poverty to a judge while booking an Okanagan estate is not demonstrating an inability to pay. He's demonstrating priorities. The court will read it exactly the way you and I are reading it, and it may well cost him not just the reduction but our fees for the whole frivolous exercise. It did. The motion died on the table. The judge, I'm told, read the invitation in open court and let the silence do the work. I did one more thing, after. And it's small and maybe petty, and I don't care. I drew up, through Imogen, a simple agreement, a one-time, very modest, time-limited dip in spousal support, generous sounding on paper, in exchange for a permanent no-contact term. Trent, Bianca, Glenda, Roland, Carolyn, Bryn, all of them, signing away the right to call my kids' schools, to send the cards, to drop by, to use a child as a lever ever again. Any future communication routed through the lawyer. Any breach voided the reduction and snapped the full amount back with penalties. I was buying their silence, and I knew it, and Imogen knew it, and the beauty of it was that they were bargainers, every one of them. They understood a transaction. They signed within a week. The reduction was a pittance to me. To them, it must have felt like a lifeline thrown across the water, the best money I ever spent. The night the signed copies came back, I stood in the front room of the East Van house. The walls were half stripped, the floors covered in paper, the whole place mid-renovation, mine down to the studs. My friend who'd been doing the work, a stubborn, cheerful contractor I'd known since culinary school days, had let me hang the last cabinet door myself that afternoon, and I'd done it slightly crooked, and we both decided to leave it. I took the wedding invitation and Glenda's note into the kitchen. I didn't tear them up. I have a little wood stove in there now, the heritage kind, and I lit it, and I held the corner of the invitation to the flame and watched the gold edge blacken and curl, and I fed it in, and then the note after it, the plea and the performance and the last ghost of their expectations going to ash in about the time it takes to soft boil an egg. Then I went up and checked on my kids. Jonah was asleep with his glasses on and a library book about tidal power open across his chest. He'd placed third in the district showcase and first in our house, and the ribbon was taped to the wall above his bed where he could see it when he woke up. I took his glasses off and closed the book. Maeve was still awake, reading by her book light the way she always is. She looked up. "Everything okay, Mom?" "Everything's perfect," I said. "Go to sleep, my brilliant girl. Love you. Love you more." I won't pretend the father-shaped hole closes neatly. It doesn't. There are nights Jonah gets quiet and I know he's doing the math on why a man would build a whole new family rather than show up to a science fair. And there's no answer I can give an 8-year-old that makes that arithmetic kind. There are days Maeve watches me a little too carefully, an old soul keeping an eye on her mom, and I have to gently hand her back her childhood and tell her she's allowed to just be 10. But here is what I know. They watched a woman get knocked flat by people who thought she'd stay down to keep the peace, and they watched her get up and refuse to scream and refuse to lie and refuse, most of all, to set herself on fire to keep them warm. Jonah will grow up knowing what an absent man looks like, and I'd bet my bakery he becomes the opposite. Maeve has already filed away, in that sharp, watchful mind, exactly what a man who manages a woman looks like, and she will never, ever marry one. I stood at the top of my crooked old stairs in my own house, bought with my own name, and I looked out the landing window at the lights of the city smudged in the rain, and I thought about how everyone had assumed the warmth in that Point Grey house came from them, from the family, from the man, and how it turned out the warmth had always been mine all along. I'd just been giving it away to people who let it go cold. I wasn't giving it away anymore. The story of being Trent's wife was over, its papers filed, its last embers gone gray. The story of the three of us, of Team Mercer, of a sagging, beautiful house with one crooked cabinet door and a wood stove that smelled faintly, that first night of burnt gold paper. That story was just starting, and I had built the foundation of it myself, board by board, on my own quiet, unshakable terms. I used to think keeping the peace was the same thing as being good. For 12 years, I swallowed every slight in that Point Grey house, told myself a level voice was a kind of grace, and watched my own children learn to shrug at a father who couldn't be bothered. The night I found that florist charge from Tofino, I finally understood the difference. Being good is not staying quiet so people stay comfortable. Being good is refusing to lie to your own kids, even when the truth costs you the whole life you built. The moment I sat Maeve and Jonah down with hot chocolate and told them the truth instead of a soft story, I chose the harder, cleaner thing, and they will carry that with them longer than they'll carry the hurt. But honesty on its own would not have saved us. What saved us was paying attention. For years, Trent and his family mistook my quietness for a lack of awareness, never realizing that the woman keeping the house tidy had read every line of every tax return, kept her grandmother's deed, remembered which lawyer she'd quietly met for coffee 2 years before. None of that came from luck. It came from staying awake when it would have been easier to drift, from doing the fairy math instead of accepting the easy answer, from raising a daughter sharp enough to clock an Alberta bank logo and a son curious enough to ask the blunt right question. Cleverness, it turns out, is mostly just refusing to look away from what's in front of you. And neither truth nor smarts would have mattered without the nerve to act. There were 100 nights I could have stayed level and small, kept the front up, told myself the kids needed an intact home more than an honest one, listing my own house, freezing the accounts, changing the locks, standing on that rain-soaked lawn looking at the FOR sale sign. None of that was easy, and all of it took a kind of steadiness I didn't know I had until I needed it. Trent built a whole second family rather than show up to a science fair. And he sowed exactly what he reaped. A man locked out of a house he assumed was his, pleading poverty to a judge while booking a vineyard wedding. Cause and effect, plain as anything. What I want Maeve and Jonah to take from all of it isn't bitterness. It's that the warmth in a home was never something handed to us by the people who managed us. It was ours, mine, the whole time. And the only mistake was giving it away to people who let it go cold. So I tell them, and now I'll tell you, tell the truth even when it's expensive. Keep your eyes open when it's easier to look away, and when the moment finally comes to stand up, stand all the way up. That's the only inheritance worth leaving.